Megumi Fushiguro is one of the most talked about characters in Jujutsu Kaisen, but not for the reason you may be thinking. Well, actually, maybe it is for the reason you're thinking. Megumi has been labeled Potential Man by the community, and in today's video, we're gonna tackle this completely and really find out why Megumi is Potential Man. What's up guys, Gamblrr here, and in today's video, we'll be going over everything that has to do with Megumi's potential, his lack of execution, and finally answering the overall question. Here's what I need you to do though. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and of course, watch it till the end. I'm going to start off by explaining Megumi's story in depth, then I'll go over what his potential entails, and then at the end we'll try and come to a solid conclusion. First off, what exactly is Megumi's potential? Megumi is a Zenin clan member, the son of Toji, and he was born with the most sacred curse technique of the clan, the 10 Shadows. This curse technique uses shadows as an intermediary to summon 10 different Shikigami. When Sukuna first sees it, he glazes the crap out of it. He commends Megumi for switching up the fighting style between Shikigami and fighting up close as well. We later find out from Gojo that the most effective way to deal with a Shikigami user is to make the fight closer than not, but Megumi does it himself. Sukuna starts analyzing the technique, asking questions about how it works, and then after he realizes the potential of it, he asks Megumi why he ran away from the finger bearer 2 chapters ago. I think we both know the reason he ran, and it's because Megumi thought he was completely outmatched, but Sukuna implying that he would have been better off not running puts a lot of things into question. First off, Sukuna literally watched the finger bearer not only blitz both Yuji and Megumi, but also Megumi was there sweating his butt off after seeing the finger bearer spit out cursed energy, let alone the blasts and barriers he had at his disposal. We know Megumi couldn't keep up in close quarters combat because it was faster than Yuji, who is faster than Megumi, so that's out of the window. Megumi literally had like 5 shadows at that point, the dogs, Snake, Nue, the frogs, and the rabbits, and none of those would help Megumi get through the finger bearer's durability, so whatever Sukuna's yapping about didn't make sense. At least not at that moment. We'll get into that when we get there, but from the first 9 chapters of the story, we see potential, a credible source vouching for it, but also we see flaws, and a lot of them. In chapter 13, we see Megumi thinking back to what Sukuna said, and even he was confused on what he meant. Did he mean that he had a chance of winning against a special grade cursed spirit? And then for the first time in like a decade, Megumi decides to touch his shadow and he finally realizes he can use it like any of his Shikigami. I don't know why it took him like a decade of using his curse technique, a life and death situation, and his friend dying for him to realize he could do this, but apparently he just never got around to it. With this ability, Megumi is now able to store things in his shadows like cursed tools, but also he's able to just jump into other people's shadows like he's shown doing during the Hakari mini arc. Next time we see Megumi fight is against Todo, and damn, he gets manhandled. But we're going over this because we see 2 interesting things. First off, Megumi finally uses Totality, the ability to combine some of his Shikigami into one using Toad and Nue. This was in order to keep Todo at distance, but this obviously fails because Todo just outright blitzes and body slams him. Megumi is still lacking on the physical side, and that's something I want you to keep in mind for later. After Todo asks if Megumi is even trying, Megumi seems like he's about to use a new technique. It's a joke in the community that Megumi was going to use Mahoraga against Todo here and kill the both of them, but honestly I don't think that was the case. I just think Megumi was close to awakening like when Yuji first used cursed energy against the finger bearer, but it was halted as Inumaki and Panda interrupted the fight. Megumi's potential awakening actually had Todo shook, and then after that he says that Megumi might not actually be boring, even though he was just calling him that the entire time. What the awakening might have entailed is almost unknown, but it's something we'll go into in a second, but for right now, we have to enter the Goodwill event. This is where things took a turn. Megumi starts off the event fighting Naruto Shikamo, and we finally find out that Megumi has a new Shikigami, the Max Elephant. Right before Megumi uses it, he just admits that he can only use it once because it takes up too much curse energy. This is a problem with his curse energy efficiency, something you also have to keep in mind for later, but it's one of the most important things when it comes to sorcery. Megumi uses Max Elephant's water and uses Nue right after as a combo attack, sending Kamo outside and shocking him with the electricity. From here on out, Megumi just gets his butt kicked though. Hanami pulls up and Kamo reveals he had an attack that would have one-shot him before, then Megumi loses all of his cursed energy from Hanami's butts. The only noteworthy thing, however, and probably the second most important development from Megumi in basically the entire story, is Divine Dog Totality. During the fight with the Finger Bearer, the white Divine Dog died, and so Megumi was able to use it in conjunction with the Black Dog, and it created an actual monster. This Shikigami is not only more agile than Megumi, but it was also way more potent than him. Aside from Todo, Yuji, and Gojo, the Divine Dog is the only other thing to damage Hanami and force her to heal. Megumi is the literal best Shikigami that won't just kill him is this, and it stays like that for the rest of the series. But don't worry, we'll get there eventually. The reason I said that this arc was when things took a turn was because during the arc, Yuji was grinding. He was already relative to Megumi without Curse Energy, then after the Mahito arc, he got Curse Energy and got Divergent Fist. And then he entered Goodwill, got training from Todo, and basically eclipsed Megumi. Even Gojo seeing Yuji knew he got way stronger, and so that's why in the next arc, we find out Megumi was asking Gojo for training. Right before the arc started, we see Megumi in a hospital bed and he tells Yuji that weak Jujutsu sorcerers don't have a sense of self, so he'll get stronger and surpass Yuji. And that's Megumi's goal, to surpass him. That's why he goes to Gojo to train, and that's why in the next arc, while Megumi is fighting an even stronger Finger Bearer than before, he's about to use Mahoraga but says no, let's try something else. This is the most important development from Megumi himself in the story. On death's door, he either has the choice of trying his best or throwing his life away to kill the Finger Bearer. He thinks back to what Gojo told him, that it's okay to be selfish, and also when Sukuna told him that he has a wasted treasure. He gets up and tries to imagine a version of himself that surpasses his limits, and he finally uses a domain expansion. I think something like this might have been when Megumi was on the cusp of using against Todo back during their fight. Maybe not even a domain as crazy as that one, but definitely something potent. Megumi's domain is incomplete during the fight with the Finger Bearer, but he's still able to absolutely stomp it, making clones of himself and his Shikigami, overwhelming it and one-shotting it with Divine Dog in the end. Megumi had reached a level he didn't even know existed before this fight, and in Gege's words, it was a way to make Megumi catch up to Yuji since he gapped him last arc. If it's not on the screen, it's because I can't find it, but hashtag trust me, bro. In Shibuya, we see Megumi continue to evolve, with him casually using Max Elephant in tandem with all of his other Shikigami. Then after this full fight, he uses a domain expansion to interrupt Dagon's sure hit. Then he fights Toji using all of his Shikigami and tactics, and then he's... Megumi's crawling away from Haruta, bleeding out, fatigued from the 3 fights he had prior, and he remembers that he sensed Sukuna earlier. So he starts to divulge his technique completely, and he thinks back to a flashback with Gojo. This is the most important flashback for the video, so listen in. Gojo gives Megumi a history lesson, the reason why Gojo and the Zenin clan are on bad terms. Hundreds of years ago, the head of the Gojo clan and the head of the Zenin clan fought in a fierce battle, and both of them died as a result. But Gojo makes sure to let Megumi know that the Gojo clan member had the Limitless and the 6 Eyes like him, and the Zenin clan member had the 10 Shadows like Megumi. Gojo was trying to poke at Megumi to let him know of how strong he could be, but even Megumi thinks to himself that it doesn't mean he could be as strong as Gojo, and he summons it. The strongest Shikigami that the 10 Shadows technique has to offer, Mahoraga. Mahoraga is the only Shikigami that's never been tamed in the history of 10 Shadows users. Funnily enough, this meant that the reason both the Gojo clan head and the Zenin clan head died was because Mahoraga 1v2'd both of them. The implications of that are a topic for another time, but in the present we find out why this was even possible. We all know Mahoraga's kit, infinite adaptation, and well, that's literally it. If you don't have the potency to destroy the Shikigami in one full blown attack, Mahoraga will start recovering and then start adapting to whatever he was hit with. Against Sukuna, it's verbatim stated that Cleave could one-shot Mahoraga, but Sukuna's entire purpose for the fight was to test out the Shikigami. and so he started the fight off, shooting a dismantle at him. The dismantle literally cuts through Mahoraga as we see it behind him, but Mahoraga wasn't destroyed, so he recovered, regenerated, and the wheel behind him spun for the first time. With the first spin, Mahoraga gained the ability to perceive Sukuna's slashes and swatted away the next one shot at him. Then Sukuna continues to play around with him, setting slashes and even hitting him with a cleave for the first time. But Mahoraga at that moment was nearly fully adapted, so the one shot capability that cleave had didn't matter anymore. This is where Sukuna realizes the full capability of the technique, and he thinks back to his fight with Megumi at the beginning of the story. He admits in his mind that the Mahoraga he's fighting at the moment might have been able to beat him if it were the version of him from back then. Quick context, Sukuna just used the main expansion, his heart was ripped out, he had Yuji in hostage, and the most important thing is that he would have wanted to test out the Shikigami as he was in that moment. So Sukuna uses his domain expansion and watches as Mahoraga walks through it, being fully adapted to the concept of slashes in general. But Sukuna suddenly uses flames that obliterate it in one shot, and overall Sukuna is just impressed by the potential of the technique. In his own words, Megumi has piqued his interest. After Shibuya, we enter the culling games with Megumi showing us basically nothing new. He uses a domain expansion that's still incomplete. And we get exposition about the shadows that we already knew. And can you guess how he ends the fight? Yeah, Divine Dog. He's a one-trick pony. After Megumi goes extreme diff with Reggie Star, he meets back up with Yuji and they start their mission to help Sumiki. Little did these guys know Sumiki wasn't there anymore, but it was Yorozu, a high-end-era sorcerer who doesn't like wearing clothes. This shook Megumi so much that his soul was shattered, and so Sukuna took advantage of the situation and enacted his plan. He chanted in chain, took over Yuji's body, force-fed himself to Megumi, and took over Megumi's body. This is where Megumi peaks, I guess. He doesn't get anything new, he doesn't learn anything new, at least not that we know of. And when he comes back after the epic battle, he's still the same old. He's still a divine dog merchant, so yeah. Now that we've gone over Megumi's awful, and I mean terrible use of his potential, let's talk about what his potential actually could have led to. It's funny that we're talking about this because we see most of it in our face with a guy named Ryomen Sukuna. Sukuna took over Megumi's body and showed us levels literally immediately. First off, he's just able to blitz and send Yuji flying as soon as he finishes ore farming. Then he uses Nue and it's larger than the entire building he's standing on. For reference, Megumi used Nue like 30 chapters prior and it was just big enough for Megumi to grab his leg and fly with. I think both of these feats are attributed to his cursed energy pool maybe, or even his cursed energy efficiency. What I mean by this is that I think Megumi can replicate something like this, but because he doesn't have Sukuna's top 1 pool of cursed energy, he can make up for it with efficiency, meaning that he uses a variant of a technique that would regularly take up a large amount of cursed energy, but with a low cost. This is all speculation, but let's take Gojo and Yuta for example. Gojo has less cursed energy than Yuta, and Yuta can casually heal limbs because he has so much cursed energy. For Gojo to replicate that, he uses his insane cursed energy efficiency to use that variant, but for a lower cost than Yuta. We already know using things like an incomplete domain expansion and even max elephant back then takes up a lot of Megumi's cursed energy, but with better efficiency, he would be able to do what he was doing before and then some because the cost isn't as high anymore. The way to train efficiency is literally never stated, but I assume it can be trained to a certain extent because we see Yuta improve through the time skip with him spamming reverse curse technique the entire time. This isn't set in stone though. Megumi could still suffer from either insane loss of cursed energy or just the inability to use the greater versions of a Shikigami. Speaking of, we see Sukuna's version of Max Elephant with it gaining a new name and having so much weight it broke through Yorozu's armor. We also see other Shikigami that Megumi just wasn't able to tame, like the Healing Deer, the Ox, and later he uses the one Shikigami we never got to see, Morning Tiger, in conjunction with like 3 other Shikigami to make Agito. Megumi again can probably reach his levels with cursed energy efficiency training, but all of that doesn't matter because there's only one Shikigami that actually holds weight. Mahoraga was tamed by Sukuna because Sukuna is him. The ritual was null in Shibuya, and we see all of Sukuna's movements after taking over Megumi's body. He just has Mahoraga because Mahoraga knows Sukuna owns him. Anyways, for Megumi to get the Shikigami, I have no idea. Maybe if he can combine like all 9 of his other Shikigami, he can create a beast that stands a chance. I mean, we have different properties in play like electricity, water, brute force, and positive energy, all kinds of stuff. After Megumi gets Mahoraga though, his work isn't over because Sukuna shows us the most insane use of the 10 Shadows technique ever. He can use Max Elephant's water himself without even summoning it, and shoots it like a piercing blood. This also means that Megumi can use reverse cursing knee through the deer without summoning it, use electricity from Nue without summoning it, heck, he could probably fly with like wings. Alright, maybe I'm dragging it, but this is still all in Megumi's capabilities. Earlier, I told y'all to remember that Megumi's physicals are insanely lacking, and this is still the case. Luckily, he can fix this through training curse energy reinforcement. Reminder that the thing that makes use his physicals so strong is his curse energy. He literally says he's on the weaker side, and Yuji confirms this, saying that he makes up for it with curse energy. Megumi can't get use his curse energy pool, obviously, but he can train himself to the point where he can hang with them. In my opinion, the perfect example of this is Hakari. I have no idea why he's so strong in base. He isn't physically gifted according to anyone, he just uses curse energy and he's fast enough to not get blitzed by Kajimo, but also he never takes a hit from Yorame in his domain. Same thing can be said for Todo in a sense. He had misinferiority in stats to Goodwill Yuji before his training, but he's still able to keep up with Shibuya Yuji at 120%, likely through, again, his curse energy reinforcement. Now, despite me yapping about what could have been, let's actually acknowledge the point of the video. Megumi is called Potential Man because of how much we know he could have achieved, but didn't. But is this fair? Yes and no. First off, for the first like 60 chapters, Megumi was facing a mental problem where he didn't have the will to bet on himself at all times like Yuji and the other strong characters were. I feel like this could have been a huge non-problem if Gojo actually did his job and trained Megumi. I mean, he was the one who said Megumi shouldn't try and be left behind. Why would he allow this crappy mindset to flourish in Megumi? Beyond that, Gojo has always known the potential of the 10 Shadows, including past stories. He just didn't care enough to tell Megumi. A reminder that Gojo was born with his gifts and was cherished and trained by his family to maximize what he could. That's the Teen Gojo we saw in Hidden Inventory. Megumi isn't given an ounce of the same treatment. Heck, dude was like 16 with maybe 4 or 5 Shikigami. One of them he got automatically, 2 of them are small animals, and another 2 are mildly impressive to tame. He only got Max Elephant after finally having a training arc, even though he had a 10-year head start on everyone else with the strongest character in the verse. However, there are things that don't make sense that Megumi does. The guy is noted to switch up the fighting style from mid-range to close range multiple times, but he never, and I mean never, trains his physicals. Todo calls his body boring, and obviously it is because the guy is frail. At least characters like Inumaki can afford to be frail because he's not the one trying to box people. Megumi is, and he's not even trying to improve the main thing he lacks in. So, should Megumi be called Potential Man? Yes, of course, but I do think there's some weird context that needs to be brought up in those conversations, because I think if Megumi actually had the help he deserved and probably should have gotten realistically, he definitely would have been way out of people's fraud watch radars. But that's where I'll end the discussion. What did you guys think? Let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe. And I'll catch y'all in the next one.